Greetings and welcome back to yet another episode of the Daily Run, and today we're playing as Samson. This run was very odd, and not because it was maybe there's anything special going on, but just because it wasn't very strong, but it also wasn't very weak. I would categorize Isaac runs into two categories, and one of those is you're either very strong, you just get amazing items, you get a lot of consumables, you basically enter a room and just kill everything in 1 or 2 shots. And the second run is when you're really not dealt a good starting hand, and you have to finagle with items that you normally wouldn't use in order to get the benefits out of them, and maybe you try to abuse them in some way just to stay competitive. And I think I really like the second part of the Isaac runs, because it does require more knowledge to actually use certain items a certain way, and in those situations you really see how useful some items can be. So let me just give you an example. Let's say that you have a very strong run going on, and you have Brimstone with a lot of damage, and you find something like a Rotten Baby. And a Rotten Baby, when you have Brimstone, obviously just isn't very useful, because you have to be quite close for that flight to home in. But because you have Brimstone, basically unlimited range, you can just do it from across the room and just kill the enemies that way. And that's much safer, that's much faster. You can kill multiple enemies at once. But if you have a weak run, and then maybe you find a Rotten Baby, you're ecstatic, because obviously Rotten Baby produces a fly that deals 2 or maybe even 3 times the amount of damage you do, and in those situations obviously that's very awesome, because it's like a secondary shot that also does damage to you. So in that situation, actually try to stay as close to the enemy as possible in order to deal the most damage as you can. So of course you'll be using the Rotten Baby, which you normally wouldn't use, just to maybe stay competitive. And this run was like that, and I think that problem is exemplified on Samson. Samson is the kind of character that either you get a way to really trigger his passive and he just becomes super strong, or you don't get it and maybe you end up being weak if you don't get a certain amount of items early on. And I guess you could say that for a lot of characters. Someone like Maggie suffers as well if you don't get any good items early on. But with Samson, because there's such a big difference, if you get hit a few times on the floor, you get stronger because of your passive. The more damage, or the more times you get hit, the more damage you do, and that resets every floor. And with Maggie, it's more like you're just slow and it's kind of awkward to play and maybe less fun, and there's less strategic depth to Maggie, and that's intended obviously because Maggie was supposed to be, or is supposed to be, a player or starting character for someone who's just starting out to playing the game, who isn't very experienced at it. And Samson still is a more advanced character that requires the player to know what they're doing if you want to actually use the passive to the greatest advantage. But in daily runs, obviously you just can get hit intentionally in order to maximize your damage, and that's a very bold strategy, or something you can do in normal runs. If you have enough health, you can just sacrifice yourself on fire to get that increased damage, and that makes playing Samson much easier and much better overall. But in daily runs, you really need to find either curse rooms or blood banks, or maybe have an Ivy bag. Getting an Ivy bag on Samson is such a great thing, because you can not only get a lot of coins, a lot of consumables, which is obviously great for points, but you can also trigger that passive or the damage passive that you have from Bloody Lust. Basically every floor you can just do it multiple times. And in those situations, Samson is a great character, but if you don't get those curse rooms and you don't have a way to actually get any damage ups or any DPS ups, just because we didn't have a lot of items or good items in this run so far, then we're kind of forced to use certain things that we normally wouldn't use. So the first Devil Deal had a Necronomicon, and I would never pick up the Necronomicon because I think it's a very bad item. Well, it's not a bad item in the sense that it's objectively bad, it just isn't very good, because it's a 6-turn charge item that you use in a room, and it just deals damage to every enemy, and that's useful against some rooms, some enemies. You just enter, you just press the spacebar and everything dies, and you can do it really fast, but then of course you have to wait 6 rooms again before you can use it again, and that makes it kind of awkward. But more importantly, just because we were forced to use the Necronomicon, in my opinion, you gain a new appreciation for it. You just maybe learn the item a bit more, and certain times you just get certain items that are much better for you than you normally would. They normally would present themselves, and that doesn't really make a lot of sense because of the way I said it. But what I meant to say was, because the Necronomicon is such a bad item, you always skip it, and I really like the fact that you're forced to use it sometimes, just because it's the optimal play in that situation, and that's maybe the beauty of Isaac. So to get back to the run, obviously it wasn't very strong up until this point, just because we didn't get a lot of DPS upgrades, we didn't get a lot of damage upgrades, we just didn't get anything to work with, and we didn't really get a way of triggering our damage passive. So we were stuck with a certain assortment of items that just weren't doing it for us. And thankfully, we had a decision to make, because we finished the third floor on the 12th minute mark, which is isn't too good. Obviously, it's a very bad time because you usually want to finish the third floor at the 9th-minute mark, which is, or at least I want to finish it. That means we were 3 minutes behind. Being 3 minutes behind means that you have to skip almost the whole floor if you want to catch boss rush in time. But thankfully that's exactly what happened. I used the Hermit card, thankfully because I got a blank card. I got teleported to the shop and the boss room was just near the shop. So I decided that maybe at that point I would just kill the boss and just go to the next floor and try to beat the next 2 floors as fast as possible in order to get to Mom and then of course to boss rush in time. And thankfully that's exactly what managed to happen. But this run just served us a big piece of cake as well. And not only because we did get thankfully some nice items like the dead shot, basically the more accurate you are, the more damage you do. And thankfully we did get a little brimstone. But the little brimstone that we got was a very peculiar thing indeed, because I was kind of in a rush, I didn't have time to think about it, but looking back at it now I would do some things differently. So I came into the treasure room, there was a reroll pedestal, so I started rerolling it, I started feeding it money, and we had blank art at that point. And obviously blank art is awesome for dailies because you can get a Yara rune and they can just break the game and get a billion amount of points. But in that situation, I was looking for an item that would really make me help or speed up the process. I was looking basically for anything that would increase our damage somewhat, or maybe just anything that would help us clear rooms more efficiently. So I start re-rolling it, and the first item we get was Forget Me Now. And Forget Me Now is a great item in dailies as well, because it allows you to do one more floor again, which means you get bonus points for exploration bonus, and you can basically beat the boss again. And that maybe gives you 1000 or 2000 points if you use it on the Dark Room, which is the final floor of where we're going today. But I wasn't feeling very comfortable with it, because I think using the Forget Me Now requires your run to be quite strong, just because if you want to do Dark Room twice without getting hit, if you want a profit of points, then you really need to have a strong run, and it wasn't looking like our run is going to be particularly strong, so I just decided maybe in that situation it wasn't a good idea. The second item we got was the D6, which is also a tease, because the D6 obviously is an amazing item that we can use to reroll certain items. We had a lot of devil deals this floor and we just didn't get any good items out of it. If we had a D6, I'm sure that that situation would have been different and that we would have gotten an item that would actually help us on a run. But the D6 was there and I decided not to pick it up again. I re-rolled it, and then we got something else that was insignificant, and then we got a little brimstone. So I decided to pick up Little Brimstone because I think Little Brimstone is an amazing item, especially on a weak run, and that's exactly the point I was trying to make in the first part of this video. So whenever you have a very strong run going on, Little Brimstone is inconsequential. He just doesn't really matter. He's just there to maybe deal some amount of damage. But when you're on a weak run, or maybe not a strong run as you would have liked, Little Brimstone provides you with some stats that are so useful that you really need on any particular run if you want to be successful. And those are spectral tears and those are penetrative shots. And that's obviously very useful against Hush and something that we really needed in that situation. Little Brimstone also helps you clear rooms and just deals a lot of damage to bosses in general. Thankfully, Little Brimstone also is quite on a short charge, meaning you can use it quite frequently, like a 2-3 second charge, which is obviously also great. So I decided to pick it up, and thankfully because of Little Brimstone I was able to be fast enough to catch Boss Rush. We caught Boss Rush maybe by 10 seconds, and thankfully, again, because of Little Brimstone, we were able to complete Boss Rush super fast. So a lot of things went right in this run, and that's of course going from the Hermit card, which teleported us near the boss room, and then we took then we just decided to go for Boss Rush, and then thankfully that floor had the reroll pedestal, and we got Little Brimstone out of it, which then enabled us to get to both objectives in time, and that's such a great thing when it happens. Basically, you make a calculated risk, not taking the Forget Me Now or maybe the D6, in hopes of getting a good or maybe an item that will help you clear runs, and we get Little Brimstone. And Little Brimstone obviously isn't the only item we could have gotten that would have been good for us. There was equal chance of getting a Tech X, for example, because Tech X is not a special item, meaning it can occur as frequently as something like Little Brimstone can. And not just that, obviously we have a lot of other great items which are also special, which are Polyphemus, obviously, Mom's Knife. What else is in treasure item pool that I can't remember now? I can't really remember, but basically there are a lot of good items which would have helped us in that particular situations. Just getting any penetrator shots as well would have been decent, because we already had Spectral Tears from our Spirit of the Night we got in the Devil Deal, which is probably the only good Devil Deal we got on this floor. Or on this run in particular, not this floor. So things went well, I would say, that just everything lined up perfectly and that we were actually able to get in this position. So we are now in the dark room, and the dark room is a hell's bane for me. I really don't like it because it involves a lot of exploring if you want to get a lot of points, and obviously to do that you have to be particularly strong because you have double adversary rooms like in this one, and then you're just gonna end up eating damage, and that's gonna cost you a lot of points. But thankfully we had the Algi's rune and the blank card, and that really allowed us to use it as often as possible, because we also had the Sackboy, and the Sackboy gives you sacks, which then give you batteries, and of course you can use it as frequently as you like, or maybe not as frequently as you like, but at least use it on rooms that you know are going to be very hard, and that you know that there's almost guaranteed damage. I did use the Algi's room because I didn't have a blank card to use in the double adversary room, which means that I can't use the blank card with it, and that was actually a calculated decision again. So I was debating, so should I maybe use the Algi's rune now and then not have the Algi's rune for the rest of the floor, and I had like 5 or 6 rooms remaining, or should I just wait, and I know I'm going to take 1 or 2 hits of damage just because it's double adversary, and maybe use the Algi's runes later on. And I decided, I debated a bit, I contemplated, and I decided to use the Algi's rune in that particular room. And that's basically because I know that that room is going to be hard for me, and that I'm going to take damage there. So for that reason, I knew that if I took Algi's rune there, I'm guaranteed to block maybe 2 or 3 hits of damage. But if I save it, I'm not guaranteed to actually get hit at all, because all of the rest of the rooms could be rather easy. Or maybe not rather easy, but just easier than that particular room, which means that there's less chance of me taking damage. And I've beaten the lamp before without taking hits on a weaker run than this one. So I decided, okay, then maybe this is a good time to actually pop the Algi's rune and not save it to use it with the blank card. Sadly, that calculated decision didn't really pay off in this particular run, but still, we did come off rather unscathed. I don't think any run or any room besides the lamp hit us, which is obviously a great thing in this situation, and our damage penalty wasn't that high for how weak this run was. So we finished on the 23rd with 41,000 points, and whenever you go this far, you usually expect something like 46, 47,000, maybe even 50,000, and of course because this run did have breaking potential, meaning you can get Shrek bonus up to 15,000, this run can possibly go to 55, maybe even 60,000 if you're really, really good. But we did finish 23rd, which is obviously great, and I'm really happy with our score. I know that today's commentary was a bit off, and that's because also this daily was a bit off, and I didn't really know what exactly to talk about, so I maybe decided to talk a bit about just Isaac rods in general. I hope you enjoyed it anyways. Happy holidays, because they're coming up, and obviously because yesterday there was Christmas and things like that. Of course, other things as well, which I'm probably not even aware of. So happy holidays, just to say it to everyone who's watching this one. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I hope to see you next time.